All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Hash Church, episode 10 of Hash Church 2.0. Bubbleman here. And I will send out the link. Let's send out the link. That's what we do here on Hash Church at 9 a.m. every Sunday morning. Not that we've done every Sunday morning for the last few months, but we're getting back into the track of things here. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to get a show organized. So these last couple of shows have really just been sort of fly by the seat of my pants, invite whoever can come the night before and kind of go from there. So we'll see who comes in now. Got people popping in the chat room all morning. We got Ron Jones and John Maddox and 70s Mamas in there and Rackham and Cuban Chronic and Cuban Grower. It should be a good one. We already have 196 viewers in the room, if you can imagine. Very, very quick. It is on like Donkey Kong, JF. Oh, my headphones just fell out. I guess I see if I can get those back in. See if we'll get someone coming into the room here. Oh, that's going to be difficult. Oh, I got it. Look at that. Sorry about that. I was plugging back the headphones in. We'll see if we can get some people in this room here. Well, that doesn't feel right. Oh, there's Tom. How you doing, Tom? Good morning, Tom.
How's it going? How are we doing today?
Doing pretty good. Trying to fix my... Yeah, there we go. It wasn't plugged in all the way. I could only hear you in one speaker. I've got this shaky computer screen because I'm trying to plug my headphones in from the front. How are things going by you?
Going well out here. You know, it's the seasons are changing. The evenings are getting cooler. You know, it's my favorite time of year. We're eating tomatoes and melons and, you know, kind of for me, you know what time of year it is by what you're eating, you know, so.
Absolutely. I also love the harvest season, but I also love it for another reason, that it is the reason that a variety of psychedelic mushrooms tend to appear each year here in the Pacific Northwest. So going to be picking stunzies, going to be picking semolinciatas, going to be picking cyanescens, going to be picking azarescens, and baeocystins. So all of those different psychedelic mushrooms will be popping up here in British Columbia, really probably within the next month and a half, depending on the spots. And that's always kind of a nice, just a little bonus, a little nature bonus.
All right, I hear you. Yeah, we just got through picking all of our blackberries, and yeah, everything's coming in. Everything's nugging out pretty well. I've got this OG that just won't flip, but, you know, probably needs another few days. But other than that, everything's going real well.
Hi,
Awesome.
Farmer Tom.
Hey, buddy, what's up? How you doing, Mike?
I'm good. It's finally starting to clear up some of the smoke out here in Eastern Washington. So it's been an interesting summer. It was unreasonably beautiful all spring, but it's been a little bit boxed in for smoke the past month.
Yeah, we've been pretty lucky out here. Like the Portland, Vancouver area and the north end of the Willamette Valley here, we seem to get not as much smoke as everybody else. We did have a few days, but on the long run, after driving up and down the coast, we really had it pretty easy around here.
Yeah, there's more wind and traveling up and down the Columbia Gorge. It kind of helps keep the air clean. So there's an onshore breeze.
Yeah, we get this nice little breeze every evening, and this little microclimate that we live off of. We get this Columbia Gorge breeze. It starts about 1 o'clock and goes to 11 o'clock at night, and it's just, you know, really been an amazing place to live. It's a little bit cooler here than, let's say, in Portland or, you know, further south, and you know, I really appreciate the little microclimates. And I think that's one of the things everybody's got to get used to when they're growing out there is figure out where you're living, figure out the microclimates, go talk to the other regular farmers, see what they're up to. And you'll really get a good idea of how things go in your, you know, little area.
Very true. Very true. Welcome both to Mike and to Skunkman Sam. I'm, of course, in Vancouver, so we got smoked out hard this year like we did last year. The last couple of years have kind of been the worst two on record for a while, but the the smoke is cleared up here as well. We've got nice clear skies. We don't smell it anymore, so a little bit better. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing fine.
Excellent, excellent. Good to see you here on this early Sunday morning, I guess mid-evening for you in Amsterdam.
Yes, that's correct.
That is correct. Very good. Well, we got Dragonfly Earth Medicine saying they were going to pop in a little bit later on. I think Wade said he was going to be making it in. I think Mark Chaldone said he was going to be popping in for a bit. So we'll have a nice little chat today as we did. Maybe Cuban too. I'm not sure. He says he's real tired, but maybe he'll come in and have a conversation with us. I see Johnny B's holding down the chat room in there. Oh, Dave P from Function Junction. What's going on, Dave P? I was just in Function Junction the other day visiting Whistler Medical. Went on a little tour there of both the Whistler Medical in Whistler and the Whistler Medical in Pemberton. And I have to say, like, I was extremely impressed with the facility that they've built. I mean, I love Whistler Medical in Whistler. They're just limited. They're in a smaller space, but they've got a really beautiful building they built in Pemberton. They got a great group of people that are just all about skiing and growing great herb, which in my opinion is a wonderful foundation for owning a licensed facility here in Canada. A lot of people, their mission is to just make cash, which, you know, I guess that's a mission as well. But as we all come from this industry from so long, it's nice to have, you know, oh, I got to mute you there, Sam. I'm coming through pretty hard on your microphone. It's just nice to have that foundation of actual, you know, mission statement of quality over profits. So I was very impressed with their facility. I'm sure I'll end up doing a tour over there in the next little bit and maybe being able to do a video of showing the whole flow, but it is beyond impressive when it comes to an indoor grow here in the Pacific Northwest. I was impressed. Can you say more about the 80 acres under glass? Not as of yet, Cosmic Lettuce, but as that comes to fruition, I will absolutely. Sometimes it's a little bit early. That was something I mentioned earlier in chat room today. I am going to be going and touring 80 acres under glass this week, upcoming week. And maybe I will do some video. It's not cannabis right now. They're growing some vegetables, but they're looking at getting into the cannabis marketplace. And what better opportunity when you have close to 100 acres of greenhouses to do such a thing? And so how was your experience after you left Vancouver, Mike? Did you have a good week?
Yeah, it's been a pretty interesting week. I mean, my truck was giving me issues, as I mentioned, so my truck's been in the shop for the week, but it's been a good week. We ended up coming back and had a couple meetings out here with a beverage company here in the east side of the state, looking at doing some investments with them. So
that's awesome.
But yeah, it's my truck's gonna, I guess, got to get some stuff replaced as maintaining a vehicle is required.
Oh, but yeah, I know it well.
That facility, though, was definitely a nice facility. It's bigger than most of the licensed grows in Washington State. The largest grows in Washington are 30,000 square feet canopies, which you can have up to 3 of them on a parcel. But when you're looking at doing a large scale hemp lab, you want to be able to source from multiple acres. So same thing's true in recreational cannabis in Canada. Now that cannabis is going full federal recreational, you're going to be able to start seeing shifts from people growing small, less than 1 acre parcels of cannabis with 50 to 100 strains on them to having an acre plus of each strain, and that really opens up the door on how you can process cannabis, how it can you can vastly increase its availability to consumers.
Well, that's kind of one of the purposes of Embark, is to build this large-scale extraction lab that does the quiver, all the different levels of extraction that we can do legally here in Canada, and then be able to offer to our customers to be able to come in with a small sample of 10 or 20 kilos, run it through all the different processes, show them where their strong points are, where their weak points are, and allow them to pick and choose the type of extractions that they want to do, building up to eventually growing the cannabis specifically for the type of extractions they want to do. So that's something that we're very excited about, and definitely, you know, a company like Segra for tissue culture is going to be a big part of that. Having the lab is going to be a big part of that. And then of course the growers, that's the magical trinity right there, where the growers are getting their cultivars cleaned, you know, free of microbial pathogen and fungi, and then being able to, you know, acquire that for the lab. So, you know, we have a little bit of an advantage in the sense that we don't have to deal with contamination. You could imagine in a big, in a large scale facility like that could become a problem for quarantine, and could be a problem for cross contamination of the machinery. Oh, Kevin Monaco says, why not just kill them? Why pass around shitty clones? Well, just keep in mind, like 90% of people are passing around shitty clones. And just because your clones don't show powdery mildew, or they don't show like bugs or botrytis or specific things that are quite visible, there are all sorts of things that can impregnate your clones, that can just slow it down, that can affect the expression of the terpene and the cannabinoids, that won't necessarily show you, you know, splotches on the leaves or powdery mildew growing in the buds, but will affect the outcome of your crop. And when you're growing, you know, 80 acres or 10 acres or whatever, that's a lot of cannabis, and you want it to be able to really have the renewed vigor of a tissue culture plant. You want it to be clean, fresh, and you want it to express itself to the maximum of its potential, of its genetic potential. So.
And the best way to take the, you know, cultivators handing out dirty clones, the best way to put them out of business is by giving consumers a better option. You can give consumers a, you know, genetically pure clone that doesn't have any pathogens on it, that's, you know, been taken through tissue culture, so it's had its genetic vigor restored, and being able to provide that to farmers on a large scale, you can very rapidly be able to, you know, hand out a you know, chemogenetically test. You will say, yes, this is this cultivar at you know, this point in time on this award in this terroir, and since you're cultivating in that terroir, this strain is probably going to do fairly well for you. Because there's tons of different microclimates that, you know, I'm smoking on some Cuckoo Gold right now, but, you know, growing equatorial sativas in Washington State probably isn't the best thing to do if you're trying to cultivate outdoors. But if you can have, you know, cultivars that are locally adapted to whatever state or whatever terroir you're in, and then, you know, that really opens up our doors for farmers to be able to, you know, best express the phenotypes themselves without having to worry about the basic things like, you know, weed genetics or potential pathogens, or even potential hermaphrodites. There's a ton of seed breeders out there that are, you know, spending tons of time breeding out in unstable genetics, and we want to hand out and provide genetics to the consumers, to the producers that are stable and not going to shit on everybody's work.
Yeah, try to stand a little closer to your mic. Oh, sorry. Just trying to get a little closer to your mic there, Mike. You were cutting out a tiny little bit. But yeah, you know, these tissue culture companies as well, part of what they really, you know, the most important factor is their microbiology lab being able to fingerprint the genetic and let you know that the plantlets that you're buying is an accurate description, an accurate genetic match of the plant you believe you're buying. And then, of course, you know, with the certification through the microbiology lab that there's not going to be these certain pathogens and vectors for problem. Everyone's quiet now. All right, well, I'll just keep talking. Maybe we'll load up a bowl here. Little a little vape exhale. I invited Sabo today. Not sure if he's going to be able to make it, but
Hey, Marcus.
hey, how are you doing there, Dr. Mark?
Good. Welcome from Planet Fish.
Yes.
Denver, Colorado.
Oh, shit. I saw that you were on Fish Tour. Man, you're living out my dreams with all these fish shows. It's been so long since I've been to a fish show.
Yeah,
it's criminal.
back. Yeah, Fish needs Bubble Man back at the show.
Dude, I want to be back at the shows.
Yeah, they're killing it. Kuroda's light rig is just unbelievable. It like moves up and down during the show. It's just really, really incredible. And out here to promote this company, 1906, which has collaborated with Fish lyricist Tom Marshall to come up with two different medicated chocolate products. One's called Bliss, which is a kind of like a Reese's peanut butter cup sort of situation, and the other is called Go, which is a espresso bean. And so this is Tom Marshall's signature. You can see Tom Marshall is the lyricist, primary lyricist of Fish, and Trey Anastasio's songwriting partner.
That's amazing. I heard they were entering the. That's awesome. I had no idea. I mean, I heard rumors that they were going to be delving in, so it's really nice to see. That's really awesome. Welcome, Cuban, by the way.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I couldn't help but not click and join in, you know. So I set up and stuff, washed my face off a little bit.
Even though you're exhausted?
Dude, yeah, dude. Mad exhausted. It's almost like I like a fucking psychedelic exhaustion level where sometimes I think I hear and see things, but it's really that. Probably haven't slept 8 hours in days.
Yeah, well, like I said, I was. What's that, Mark?
Hash exhaustion, like tennis elbow, you know. It's just a
dogs, the work,
Yeah, a casualty of the industry or what you do, you know.
Oh, no, I'm not tired because of the hash. I actually haven't made much hash this year, bro. Like, I think that in all of 2018, I probably didn't do maybe not even a week's worth of what I did in 2015. So it's not hash, but I am raising puppies. I have a litter of 14-day-old pups, and they need to get fed every 2 to 3 hours. And at first they're kind of quiet, you know, you can set a bed next to the whelping box and it's cool. But when they start making noise and they're sleeping all day but crying all night, dude, it's fucking rough.
I feel you on that hash thing. You know, I haven't been making as much myself. I'm ready to gear up. But going to Whistler a couple of weeks ago, we worked for about 4 hours and we made almost 2 kilos of dried bubble. Love this sort of industrial scaling up of hashing and not pulling these like 10 and 20 gram bags, but pulling these like multi-ounce screens that, you know, add up to many kilos after a short period of time. And that was just out of the 250-liter machine. We didn't even use the 1,000-liter machine. So you can imagine once we start dumping 40 or 50 dry kilos into one of those large scale units that we'll be able to make maybe 5 kilos in a shot or whatnot, maybe a little more.
So as soon as you posted the video of the washer a couple weeks ago, people started hitting me up like, yo, check out this badass machine Bubble Man's using. And it's pretty badass indeed. But I noticed that it stirs from the top.
Absolutely.
So the washer spin from the bottom without anything.
Correct.
The material. How do you feel about that? Because I'm a big believer on the chamber spinning.
Yeah, I love the chamber spinning, and that's why we really designed the large scale unit. The thing that we didn't really share is the spinner, the linear actuator, and what it actually looks like and how much time and energy it took to design that to actually spin the material so all of the material gets spinned rather than just some simple thing that spins and the material doesn't get touched. So the problem in a GE EU GMP certified facility like it is federally here in Canada, microbials are a big problem. And when you spin from the bottom, you are going to have some serious problems with bacteria unless you can take that machine apart every single time. And that's the real problem. I love spinning from the bottom, Cuban, and we're not stopping. We're trying to figure it out. But I can tell you that the people that have figured it out, like if you take those machines apart and you look in the bottom, there's going to be things that get captured. You have to take the machine apart every single time you mix, and it really becomes a problem for workflow. Maybe if you had many units and you were able to run, you know, fresh batches in each reactor throughout your day, and at the end of the day you steam clean or autoclave all of these stainless steel chambers. But the real problem is having that thing spinning at the bottom and having water and hash get into that area and stay and not clean out properly. Then you're looking at a microbial nightmare. And for Health Canada, they just won't pass it. It won't be able to be sold. So this is one of our problems. I'm 100% on point with you. I love the spinning from the bottom. At the same time, we're getting 17 to 20% yields out of the water hash that we're running up in Whistler. Not always. Sometimes it's as low as 12%. But what these guys have done with their data points and the mixing, you know, they'll mix for, you know, an hour plus, but they'll stop it at 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And there's a graph that's been created for each different cultivar where you can see where it actually starts really clearing out the material. And this has been a problem with bubble hash for a long time. It's easy to get the good stuff off, and that's all I ever really promoted. But there's an enormous amount of stuff that's left over that can be used in plant fat extractions, that can be used in all sorts of different other sort of products, and it was getting left behind, and people were always just like, oh yeah, I'm getting 10 or 12%, and they were quite happy with it. But getting upwards of 17, 20%, and even 25% return on bubble hash is something that we are actually pretty stoked about. So when we sell these machines, all of that data is coming with it. So it comes along with the IP of the different cultivars, the graphs for each cultivar, the mixing times, and the shape and size of the blade that goes into spin. So 100% on point, and very, very, very good question.
Yeah, and I'm on board with you on the sterilizing the washers or the vessels every run. I mean, it's very important. Any or plant matter, or what they call here, it's funny, in California they call material biomass. It's a crazy term, but as long as you have biomass, water, and you leave it in a chamber, even a small particle can contaminate the hash, you know, if days after, if it runs through. So we modify the washers heavily. You know, when I was washing, I still used the washers that you sold years ago. But on, I definitely feel you on those designs. But you can still fabricate something with that like minimalistic concept in mind, with easily removable parts, not a lot of little nooks and crannies to clean it in between runs, right?
I mean, not as easy as you would think. We're definitely trying and working on it. I was just looking at the Delta separations unit up on the Sunshine Coast the other day. My buddy's got one of those, and it mixes from the bottom, but it only really runs a couple, you know, 2 to 6 pounds at a time, maybe 8 pounds. I'm not even sure. We're looking at 40 and 50 kilo runs, and maybe even eventually getting it bigger than that. So we want to, you know, the lab that I'm building, and Mike's going to be a big part of this. We want to bring him on for the CO2 extraction and to help with other parts of the isolate and whatnot. We're really looking to make sure that the traditional hash rooms, and I say traditional in the sense of water extraction, dry sifting, and rosin, versus the solvent extractions like cryoethanol versus the CO2 extraction. I want to make sure that the hash has a footprint that is at least substantial compared to the oil that we're going to be producing, because the cryoethanol that we're going to be doing has the capabilities of processing almost 10,000 pounds per day of plant matter. And so to be able to do that much, you know, even at 50 kilos every 2 hours in the 1,000-liter reactor, and we get 4 of those reactors, you know, that kilos of water hash run every 2 hours. We could probably do about 1,000 kilos a day through the water hash extractors. It's still, you know, only 10% of what's going to be produced in the oil. So of course, me being a solventless guy, I love the idea of getting that up as high as we can. And anytime you scale anything up, generally there are these arcs that happen, these sort of exponential arcs that occur, and it just becomes a little bit more difficult. You never really realize, like with water hash, it's the thrashing ratios, threshing ratios that you get, where how much threshing versus how much water versus how much ice versus how much plant matter is in there. It changes as the reactor gets bigger and bigger. And you really have to accord to that. But I'm definitely on point with you in the sense that I love the idea of a bottom, chamber. And we've thought of a few different ideas. We've got engineers on this. We've moved this well beyond hash makers. We've hired engineers who are very much engineers. They're mechanical engineers. This is what they think about, and it's all about putting those two groups of people together. And Whistler Technologies is really sort of pushing the forefront on this right now with hiring engineers to sit with hash makers and to work together to overcome these obstacles. Because an engineer will come up with all these ideas based on not really understanding the subtle nuances of the resin gland and the breaking of the resin gland and how it sinks in the water. And so the hash makers really tuned into these things, collecting the hash, workflow, whereas the engineers just trying to solve problems. So when you put those two people together, I think there's going to be some real breakthroughs in the upcoming year or years with water extraction, as well as dry sifting.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, you have to. I personally don't have the balls to run that much material at one time, bro. That's like my biggest fear, like fucking something up like that. So I always do like washers. Have you ever had like a washer drain or just fuck up and you're like, man, thank God it's just a pound.
Straight up, dude, this scalability thing is terrifying. But I read a really good quote from someone recently. It was, if your dreams aren't terrifying you, if your dreams aren't making you terrified, then you need to, dream bigger. And that really resonated with me. I was like, okay, I guess I'm on point, because I'm like, 1 minute I'm like, this is amazing, this is going to be awesome, and then the next minute I'm having an anxiety attack. Like, holy shit! Like this could be too much. This could be errors. And like you said, a pound is a pound, but 50 kilos is 50 kilos. Hey, welcome to Wade Laughter and to D420K, who just showed up into the room. Welcome, guys.
So you have. Sorry.
How you doing, brother?
What's up,
Hello,
bro?
everybody.
Just to get this question out real quick before I lose.
Yes.
I have a bad memory, bro. I smoke too much and I forget shit. So
No, do it.
Hash church, bro. I take so many dabs by the end of the church, dude. I'm like blasted.
Well, you need to get some alpha pinene dominant terpene cultivars and push those myrcene cultivars to the side for a bit, because you'll get that focus back. You'll get that real focus back. But go ahead, ask your question.
So how are you draining these 50 kilos at a time? Definitely not through no 20-gal bubble bags. So that means you must be designing some heat.
Oh yeah, dude. You didn't see those screens?
No, I'd love to. I want to see what you're gonna drain 50 kilos worth of resin through, bro. It's crazy. Are they steel?
Stainless steel, yeah, dude.
Oh man. So engineers, dude, like you said, they're good at solutions. And when they bring shit like that, I'm like, nah, man, don't reinvent the wheel. The bag with the mesh is the shit. But now that I see you're with the mesh.
Well, you see the bottom here too. It's not a very good, but the bottom right here.
Yeah.
That's about 60,000 US dollars, and what it does is it vibrates, and you can set it to vibrate so it's offset or onset. There's all these different settings that you can do, and the stainless steel screens, you can vibrate them so the patterns travel in one direction, travel in the other direction, go towards the center, go towards the outward area. It is unbelievable to watch, man. I'm telling you, you would be like a kid in a fucking candy store watching this thing operate. But it's no joke. They're definitely costly units. They're from the mining industry, and the amount of control that you have over them. It's the first time I saw it, I was just like, yes, this is absolutely on point. And I was super glad that, give a shout out to Daniel and Kelvin and all the crew over at Whistler Technologies. I'm super stoked to join that team and just move water extraction and dry sifting into this, I guess, industrial scale that is so needed, without the worry, which everyone's always got the worry, and Cuban just sort of pointed it out. It's not just mucking up the pound, it's losing the quality. So it's a very interesting thing. What we're trying to do is create something that can not sacrifice the quality, but acquire the quality in that first pass, and then still acquire the rest of the actual resin without just doing plant fat extractions or solvent extractions. We want to really be able to get as much of that hash off in the traditional ways, which is microencapsulated resin glands. You know, maybe a lot of people don't think it's different, but cannabinoids that have been melted off with heat or solvents are just different from the microencapsulated resins. And it's why some people prefer hash and some people prefer oil. I love having both of them in my quiver. You can imagine for many, many years, I smoked only hash. I would not smoke solvent extracted hash, and that's oil, and that's all there really was. And so when rosin came out, that was huge for me, because suddenly now I was able to play around with oil when, ask someone like Dee, who's known me for a long time, did I ever smoke oil? The answer is fuck no. I think he's frozen up, but
Actually, I tried to hand you some a long time when we first met, and you were very polite and said, "Thank you very much. I'll give this to some of my employees, and they might like it, but I don't smoke it." And I was like, "What?
What a fucking dick!"
Let's see what you got. Yeah.
And you saw what I got.
Oh yeah, that changed my world. Changed it right there and then.
Definitely changed your direction, at least.
Yep. I remember the volcano. You brought out a little bit of real shitty. This is my all go-to to sell these out of my store too, was come in the back and I'll take some leaf out that I've had for about 2 years, and I'll put it in the little thing there, and we'll vape it and tell me how you like it. And it tastes like fucking killer hash every time. I'd sell them every time just like that, just because of that. And that's what you did to me. Here, let's just put a little of this in there and try that out.
You know, people always kind of laugh about older material. A big problem in the Canadian situation, LP situation, is sometimes before they get their license, I was talking to a guy yesterday, he's got 300,000 grams in his vault. He hasn't sold a gram yet. They just got their license to sell yesterday. And people are always like, oh, who wants to smoke year-old resin? Like that's bunk. And I can assure you that it is not bunk, especially from a hash maker's perspective. Cured resin makes wonderful, wonderful hash. I have some here, some rosin that I made. This is some Harmony. This was on bud I grew in 2012. So the bud was 6 years old, and I pulled it out of my freezer. When I put this under people's noses, every single time it's the same thing. The eyebrows go up, and the wow comes out of their mouth. And it's not because I'm some amazing grower. It's really more that the cultivar was special. I got it from Reefer Man. It's the Harmony. It has an absolute fucking beautiful nose, super stinky. You can smell it from 100 feet away type of thing. When I open it at a show, people come in depending on the way the air is flowing. But nobody can believe that shit is 6 years old. Now, it was left in herb, in bud, and I froze the bud, and I just squished it maybe 3 or 4 months ago now. I'm not even sure, but you can do some amazing things with older material. Go ahead.
Probably the most important thing was you had it frozen for 6 years.
100%. I mean, my God, it would just do that.
That's what makes the difference. You can freeze resin for a decade, it barely changes.
Bingo. And that's what, that's what you can do if you're forced to have herb in storage for long periods of time. Don't let it be ruined. Just store it in a freezer. I mean,
you can even freeze it. Like if it starts raining and stuff, you can harvest the plants, freeze them before you dry them at all.
Yeah.
And then what you can do is you can take them out later as you need them and hang them up to dry, let them dry in the normal 2-week dry, and they're fine. The color changes a little bit. The colors darken up a little bit from the freezing. But except for that, man, it works totally easy.
I love that everything you say is firsthand experience. Like you guaranteed did this to crops.
Absolutely, I guarantee it. People I know didn't have enough room to dry. They lived in a little tiny shack, and they had no place else to dry. So, but they had a freezer, deep freeze. So they filled it up and pulled it out, as they had room, and it worked all fine.
It reminds me of Switzerland back in like early 2000, 2001, 2002, when suddenly, they were kind of allowing it as an aromatherapy product. If you put the bud in a little pillow pouch, they could sell it at stores. And so people were growing there was no licensing. It was Swiss style. It was just like, yeah, you can just grow it. And so people were like, boom, like putting up acres and acres and acres, just the most ridiculous amount of cannabis. And some of the barns that I saw, I mean, it was inspiring, and then it was like heart-wrenching because it was so much of the material. And I'm sure you guys remember Indra talking about this back in the day, of like him going in and cleaning out the mouse piss and the mouse shit. Like the herb just molded. It was just, they packed it so tight into these barns because they didn't have enough room to dry it. And it would have just been incredible had they had a system where they could freeze a large scale freezers and just, process it as they could, and that's the problem with biomass. If you can only process 100 kilos a day and you've harvested 300,000 or 400,000 kilos, you're just, it's not going to be conducive to a proper workflow.
That much might not be easy either.
What's that, Sam?
Freezing that large amount may not be that easy either. You'd have to have one hell of a big freezer.
Well, I'm looking at them right now, industrial scale, $500,000 to $1 million freeze dryers, and man, are they inspirational. To be able to freeze dry 50 kilos or 10 to 50 kilos of bubble at a time. Sure, you can put I think it's about 5 kilos in a freeze dryer in a harvest, right? I think in the large scientific one, you can do about 5 kilos. We want to be able to do 50 to 100 kilos without having a wall of freeze dryers. So I've been looking at these industrial ones, and they are no joke.
So in the apple industry, they actually will bring tins of apples into specially built warehouses. They'll pull all the air out of those warehouses and replace it with nitrogen in a way that explodes taste in the apple. I'm sure that this industry grows, will be building custom-built drying warehouses in vacuum flush and freeze dry.
Yeah, I suspect as well that you'll have large-scale refrigeration, and pulling the oxygen out of the air and replacing it with nitrogen is definitely another way to. There's, it's funny, Mike, because all of these things that we're looking to discover are already being done in other industries. Like almost every aspect of what we're looking to do for scalability, when it comes into the tissue culture aspect, when it comes into large scale freezing and drying, curing, when it comes to large scale processing, these things already exist on a very large scale throughout the agricultural community, from seed crops to vegetables to whatever. So it's just going to be really a matter of, tweaking out some of those things and getting proper engineers with proper hash makers and harvesters and trimmers and curers and all the people that do all these different jobs to get these things really, sort of created into a proper workflow that won't sacrifice quality.
Don't forget the chemist.
Well, man, I could never forget the chemist. A lot of what we're doing, Mark, is chemistry, and I'm sure we're going to have you out at one point in time to come visit this place because it's going to be the Willy Wonka chemistry lab. You're going to fucking love it, dude.
I can't wait. When you were describing sieving before, Mark, that's very similar to a process that's used in the pigment industry to separate pigment for paint and coatings. And so they have these industrial sievers on scales that you wouldn't believe. I mean, it would fill silos. I mean, just huge, gigantic things. And the one thing I'll say is, one thing I've always learned, and I guess you guys will learn this, everyone will learn this, no matter what you do, whenever you scale something up, like if you're taking something from like the experimental R&D scale to maybe like the smaller production scale to the like ultimate like huge levels of production, you always find new, I won't call them issues, but just things. There's always new things to deal with. When you're working at such a small scale, you may not realize that you're generating, say, something that could do what chemists would call a runaway reaction, which is something that you couldn't necessarily predict on a really small scale. But when you have stuff sitting around at that temperature, at that stage in the process, now you're going to have heat buildup or something else is going to happen. And you always find new stuff whenever you go to, it's just like making coffee, you know, making coffee in a K-cup versus making a pot of coffee versus just making huge amounts of coffee. I mean, you always find new shit. Like you were talking about microbial buildup. There's always just sediments that build up, sedimentation, and a lot of these batch processes, which it sounds like most of what you guys are running are what I would call a batch process as opposed to a continuous process, which is just a switch that you turn on and oil comes out or hash comes out, just some continuous, like think of like a VTA unit is like the oil machine, right? As long as you have it backed up with precursor, you just turn on that switch and oil machine, just oil starts coming out, right? That's a continuous process versus a batch process, which are like your 2 liters smaller, distillation, where you need to like fill it each time. And like baking a cake, you make your distillate and then you need to clean it out. And you need to, the cleaning as a, really a function of the overall process is one of the most important parts to make sure that you clean your reactor and get everything clean for the next batch so you don't have contamination. And it's a really important thing when you go to scale things up. If you were to take like a 2 liter distillation and go to like a 20 liter distillation, there's going to be issues that you just can't predict until you're running that distillation and you're doing that equipment.
That's why. Listen, you have to design these units specifically with the intent of not only producing that quality and the quantity as well, but with the in mind that you're going to be needing to clean these units a lot, and the cleaning has to be effective, and it has to be a part of the workflow, and it has to be somewhat quick. You can't have downtime for days because you need to clean your monster unit. And it's super important. Sorry, I muted you there, Mark. I just.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to add, and again, people who are, again, thinking about this kind of thing is you want to add an area in your facility for this cleaning, because you don't want to have that cleaning in your production area. You almost want to take it into like a side area where you can do cleaning away from, like if you can back it up with a second unit while your team is cleaning one unit, you could, you know what I mean? I mean, you want to allocate space for cleaning if you're looking at putting a floor plan or planning the use of space and area. I think cleaning space is well used space in this kind of operation.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. Although I guess the cryoethanol unit can work by just running ethanol through the unit. You don't really have to like take that unit away and
yeah. Are you doing free floating plant material, or is it in socks, or like how is the cryoethanol?
Well, that all that IP belongs to my partner Anthony, who runs Infinite CBD and Synertech down in Colorado. So he'd really be the one to talk about that. He's going to be the one running that aspect of the lab. I'm not a CO2 or an ethanol guy, but we'll get him on Hash Church here one of these days. Maybe even today I'll invite him on to talk a little bit about cryoethanol. Not impossible.
Well, if he's coming to the fish show, check me out at the Bliss Lounge before the show. Tom Marshall is going to be there and signing people's things, so come and get a selfie with Tom Marshall and say hi. And if he's listening, let's hook up at the Bliss Lounge at Dick's at Fish if you're going to be there.
Absolutely, man. I wish I was.
I wish you were here too, Mark. I'll channel you. I'll do a live stream tonight, and I'll put you on camera, buddy.
Dude, that's the way I go to fish shows now, actually.
I know. You live vicariously through me, brother. That's cool. We'll set you up.
100%. And Mr. Miner also sends me his couch tour links, and so I got to give Mr. Miner a shout out.
Yeah. We know Mr. Miner. I know him pretty well. I've danced around that dude for damn near 20, 25 years. Yeah, Hank Schwab. There's a lot of people at the shows. Well, our curveball, this festival here in upstate New York was canceled.
I know.
I don't know if you heard this, but Yeah, there was a camp.
I saw it. I heard it. I saw the photo of the guy telling Trey on stage while it was happening. I was all over it. But I should say thank you, Mr. Miner.
It was a real heartbreaking thing. So, I mean, there's a lot of energy from that closed down festival that kind of is sort of centralized here in Denver. And yeah, last night of the 3-night run tonight. So, well, fun.
Pot Poncho says small batch will always be the highest grade. And I tend to agree with him, but it's also the obstacle that I want to turn into the opportunity to change that statement. I want to see that statement change. And it was really Skunkman Sam who kind of changed that for me when, we were sitting down one time and he just said, all these people that think you can't grow super awesome herb large scale are just wrong. I know because I've done it and I've seen it and he's grown like fields of cannabis that are like of the highest quality that if you extracted the resin and you smoked it, you surely wouldn't be like, yeah, it's okay. It's like at the top echelon of greatness. And so I'm thinking, why can't we too do the same thing with extraction? That's what we need to do to make it available, to make it accessible for everyone, the highest quality. We need to figure out that obstacle of overcoming scalability. And so it's a mission that I'm on.
Hey, Marcus, I just wanted to comment on temperature too. I mean, yeah, whenever you look at any chemical degradation process, the cooler you could make things, the slower that degradation process becomes. So 100%. Yeah, keeping things cold, in the dark, and dry.
Very good advice. 100% good advice, and definitely something that we're paying careful attention to. Cold, 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 cold. We're going to design this proper. So go ahead.
The other thing you got to remember, these chiller units throw a lot of heat into the room that they live in. So if your area is like a confined area and you have chiller units that are running to chill various parts of your operation, those chillers throw a lot of heat in the area. So you want to make sure that, again, you have a way to remove the heat from that room if you can.
Yeah, no, these are all parts of the design. We're looking at putting certain things on the roof. We were trying to get them on the outside of the building, but some of the limitations with the property footprint won't allow for that. So we're definitely on the first meeting. I walked through first with Mike. I did a great video with Mike in this facility. We'll be able to release it at one point in time, but the project's just in its infancy stages. So we're going to kind of leave that as a little bit more on the down low, but definitely the second walkthrough that I did, well, actually the fourth or fifth walkthrough I did was with a team of 25 people, construction, electricians, engineers, architects, the whole 9 yards. We started walking through this facility, and it's quite incredible when you get that many brilliant minds together, specifically, a lot of moving parts to start focusing on a project, and you just go room by room and you just basically you write down the pain points, the obstacles that are in your way, and then you get those minds on, taking those pain points apart and offering relief to each one. So it's an exciting thing to be a part of. Obviously, like Cuban mentioned, there's this large scale fear that comes with large scale scalability, but you can't let that fear keep you from pushing the boundaries. And, we may not be the only ones that are doing this, but the work that we do is definitely going to affect the community, much like the work that we did with bubble bags over the years has deeply affected the community. I mean, I'll tell you, 1999 pre-bubble bags was a different world in the world of extractions. It was a real different world. This whole full melt bubble and 99.9% heads. Sure, Sam was on the boat, but it was a very lonely journey because he was literally the only one. And so now, most people on this panel have made it, have access to it. It's just kind of a no-brainer. Water, ice, beautiful plant matter.
5 years ago, when I built my first walk-in freezer so that I could operate a rotary sifter and process 50 or so kilos a day really easy. There was no going back. I mean, once I realized that I could operate this dry sifting machine in the middle of the summertime when it was hot and humid, which normally that puts a screeching halt to dry sifting. But
100%.
when you've got it cold and dry, then you can do it year round. You just have to freeze the material overnight and work with it in the morning and keep it working cold and dry.
Yeah, no, it's a big changer. It's one of the beautiful things about living in Canada, I will say, because the winters tend to be cold and dry. And so you've obviously seen some of the dry sifting videos, I hope, that I put out on Bubbleman's World.
That definitely works when the winter's that way. I mean, I didn't invent it. It was invented by people in Afghanistan and other places, and says the best sifting is when it's cold and dry.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you may not have invented it, but you certainly had a deep impact on the world of hash makers. I'll tell you, just in that moment where you allowed me to photograph your resin, when I first met Sam back in the day, he was almost like, I was almost afraid. He was like the professor. He just had so much knowledge. I didn't want to offend him. I didn't, he was a very particular fellow in the sense that he just was a no fuck around kind of guy. And so, I didn't even want to ask him, hey, could I photograph your resin? But at one point, after a few trips to his house, I asked, I said, hey, can I photograph your resin? He was like, yeah, sure, why not? And that photograph of that 99.9% heads, that was the first time that a photograph like that showed up on the internet in the cannabis world. And I'll tell you, it really, really, really affected a lot of people in regards to what can be done.
It showed the masses it is possible.
Absolutely. I shit myself damn near when I took that picture in your living room. When I saw what was, before I took the picture, when I focused the camera and saw what your hash looked like under a microscope, I just couldn't, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe that you did that with dry sifting, like that you didn't use water. Water just was so easy to extract the heads, but then it's also extracting these water solubles. It's pulling something out. The water's smelly, the water's dark. It's not staying in the hash. And, Sam had all of that present in his hash. So it was definitely a big shout out to him, and shout out to Cuban for helping keep the popularization going, and shout out to D420K, and shout out to all the hash makers for that matter, as well as the growers, because shit, we are nothing without you. We are nothing without the growers. That's my humble opinion.
Should we get a nice big bong rip in or what?
Yeah, come on, say it. Say it.
Bong rip, mother lovers.
The growers. What about the seed makers and the people who collected seeds worldwide?
Absolutely.
And what about the landrace farmers?
Yep, I'll shout out I'll shout out everyone. Keep going, dude. We'll shout out the landrace farmers. We'll shout out the seed collectors, because those guys did some important work collecting. Sam going and living in all the hash producing countries and collecting those seeds back in a time where it was, probably fairly dangerous to do that work. That was also huge.
Even the landrace farmers. I mean, the present landrace farmers are really only. They're just the present caretakers of the heritage, because some of these land races, I mean, the heritage has been going on for hundreds of years.
It's true. It's incredible. It's quite interesting, the shoulders of giants that we all sit upon. Whether you are aware of the history that brought this to you or not, some of the prohibition that occurred, the yanking of the teeth out in the Cairo Square for the Sufis, like a lot of people suffered a lot of years for this plant to thrive and continue to be collected, to be grown, to be processed, and to be vaporized.
Just the sharing of information, I mean, that's powerful too, from generation to generation. And I feel like the internet really blew things up too when it came to cannabis. Thanks to like that picture that you took of Sam's work, it motivated me to be able to figure out what to do with a bunch of keef that I had sitting around. Without the internet, would have never seen it, So that's powerful. And I had a thought because the other a lot of people are like, man, water's a solvent, and I heard you say it last week, and I don't get into those type of talks because to me, if it's not butane or whatever, then to me, hash is hash, But if water is a solvent, is keef and dry sift the only real deal non-solvent?
Well, it's the least footprint. So whenever you use anything to extract, you leave a footprint or you extract something that leaves that footprint. So with water hash, it's simple. Whatever we're pulling out into the water is our footprint. It's what's been removed from the hash. And those processes occur in all forms of extraction, but with
also too, most solvents leave behind some of the alcohol or the BHO. I mean, if you test it afterwards, you can usually find a tiny bit of that. With water, all you got to do is dry it good enough, and the footprint is gone from the materials.
But it's still, and I will say this, Cuban, the highest quality of water hash I've had is absolutely on point for the highest quality dry sift that I've had. When you break into those 10s, i.e. it's been grown like a 10 out of 10, it's been processed and cured at like a 10 out of 10, to me, they're right on par. But generally, most people's water hash is not a 10. So anytime you get like a sift that's a 9 point whatever or upwards of a 10, it's going to seem nicer than most water hashes. That being said, when you have that 6-star water hash that drips away to nothing and has all the flavor of the bud, for me, they're both on point. I would have a hard time picking one over the other.
Is that you just don't get the same yields from dry sift, most people, that you can get with water hash. You get much higher yields.
Yeah, that's true as well. I mean, even when we were in Jamaica and you had that beautiful dry sift and we made that beautiful water hash, I think we smoked them both pretty, like I don't remember just smoking all of the dry sift till it was gone and then smoking the water hash, which is generally what I do when something's just better. If something's much better, it's a very easy decision. And it's why, I kind of had that idea for Legends where, Legends of Hash, we don't have to judge it. Why don't we just put like a gram or 2 grams of everybody's hash out on the table on a separate plate, and the hash that's gone first, and just taking, a hit, not taking like half a gram each time, but just taking your 1 or 2 hits from each one, because there could be 20 or 30 or 40 varieties on the table, and that's 20 or 30 or 40 hits. Just take 1 hit of each one and see which one you go back to, because it whittles down. Like any connoisseur, 40 cultivars on the table, he'll know the top 5 right away by looking at them, and then by smoking them, he'll whittle it down to like, this is the one. I don't know, I just keep taking it until it's gone, and then it's sort of like a nod to the hash maker, very much like how some of the Babas do it in Shivaratri in Nepal, when it's Shiva's birthday and they have these hash gatherings. My manufacturers told me that's exactly how they do it. They put it out on the plate, and whoever's plate is empty first, everyone, gives their respect that way. And I think that's a really kind of cool way to do it. The people's choice.
Yeah, I like that. They did that similar style with 3rd Gen, the Invitational. They had a nice dinner. Cool. They had everyone brought their own jar, and it just started getting passed around until there was a unanimous decision of who had the heat. I didn't attend, but it sounded cool, I definitely get that water hash and dry sift comparison. Personally, I really like water hash. I like water hash more than dry sift myself. If it's good water hash, RO, proper fresh frozen, like slow spin first wash. Don't spin for 15 minutes and give me that 90, because I'm not gonna like that over dry sift. But some nice like drip into water is good. But when people start making water hash and they use tap water or some filtered water, and then there's like some of that hard water taste, no matter how good the resin is.
How about some fluoridated ice?
Yeah, like all that stuff, I could taste that stuff because I taste pure resin when I make dry sift. And what I'm trying to do is like enhance that terpene with the fresh frozen terpenes, but not add calcium and magnesium and all that other weird shit from like not good source water or ice. So water hash, it all depends on who's making it.
100%.
I only smoke water hashes with Perrier.
Yeah, he likes the bubbles. That's Sam's style. I tried to sneak some Fiji water bubble, and he was not having it.
No.
I like that carbonation, you know, just CO2 water extract just does it.
You know where it pops and gets on your face when you're dabbing it? It's just like popping and.
That's how you get off those bulbous heads on the plant matter, huh? With the Perrier, just bubbles them right off.
Oh, dude, it's a secret tech. Don't tell anyone.
Dude, you're talking about
whatever you do, you can't tell anyone.
Oh shit! 536 people are watching, including the Dragonfly Earth Medicine crew.
Well,
Josh and
all
Kelly.
536 one of them have to real quickly promise not to tell anyone.
I think they're all promising now in chat. Welcome, guys.
Hey everybody.
Thanks. Hey everybody. Happy Sunday. Nice
Look
to
at
see
you guys. You guys look all profesh.
We've been having conferences today, and now we're just in a hotel room in Spokane.
Well, I love it. You guys clean up well. Let me tell you.
Well, thank you.
You're good-looking people. I love that you guys were in the garden last week, and now you're like in the straight like hotel room. You're like, look, we like to keep a foot in the corporate world, but we're also very much Dragonfly Earth Medicine people, and we like to grow the medicine.
Absolutely.
Definitely cultivation is our main thing, you know, to us that's the beginning. You know, we like home birth and natural births for human beings as well. And we also really like, you know, natural cultivation and, you know, pure cultivation. It's really important to us.
We were just shouting out the hash makers, then we were shouting out the growers, and then Sam, of course, in his great wisdom was like, hey, what about like the Landrace, you know, stewards, the people who have been like, and the seed collectors that went and gathered these seeds, like, whew, it definitely, you can follow it way back, but I'll give props to all of the aspects of cannabis.
The Space Brothers who brought the seeds to the Landrace people.
Ah, yes, the Space Brothers who came down. Where were they from? Sirius B or something like that? Or was that the Dolphin people? We just lost 200 people. Mark Saldone's gonna comment on that.
Take myself off mute, but I don't have anything to say.
I love that you're this, you know, analytical chemist mind, but you're like super trippy fish dude as well. You must just hear some great things at these fish shows.
Blame it on Garcia, man. It was all because I was spun out kid on Dead tour in the 80s, you know, following the band. Just being passionate, you know. That's what Jerry Garcia teaches us, is to be passionate in what we do and to understand everything that's happened before you. You know, you really have to have an appreciation, just like music and science, you have to have an appreciation of everything that's happened before you to be able to internalize it and then do something new.
Well, that's where humility comes in. Humility comes into play, because you have to be humble to accept those things.
You bet. I think that's one of my best qualities, but I don't know. But I think the other thing that you have to really do is you have to really figure that the best way you can, you know, learn is just keep the channels of communication open. So even like Hash Church or the chat room. I mean, the chat room is just, I think the best thing about having a Hash Church is waking up to know that this whole group of people, even before the program starts, is in the room, you know, and I can tell you exactly who they are. They're like the same 50 people that are there every time, right? So as soon as you bless us with the idea of, hey, we're going to have an episode this week, there's already like a cosmic gathering, kind of like the way there used to be at a Grateful Dead show. People just knew they would come because it was there.
It's definitely a pretty cool way of looking at it, and definitely a big shout out to the core group, the 70s Mamas and the Bingo Lombardis, the Taste Bud 420s. He just said Taste Bud 420. We never leave, Mark. If I set up the chat room on like Monday, tomorrow for next week, there will be like a big chunk of them in there for the whole week, which is great. I mean, you know what? It's this it's this passing around of ideas, that open dialogue, and you get a lot of people in the fear and scarcity world in that corporate greed of like, oh, I gotta make sure. It's kind of musical chairs, but with a ball, and it's dialogue, and the ball is the logos, it's the language, and we pass that ball around, and sometimes it lands on someone and it cracks open, and that's the timing. And so many people are afraid of that it's not going to land on them. They've just locked it up. They're not sharing anything, and they're not really active in the dialogue. And this is sort of a problem, I'm sure, in many aspects of life, but definitely in the cannabis industry, it's a big problem that people are just afraid to see those great ideas go around, land on someone, and then have it blow up for them. I'm down with that. I'm good with whoever it lands on, as long as we keep the dialogue going. What do you say there, Johnny B?
You know, I'm just kind of like hanging out here, doing what we love to do.
Making some sift?
Yeah, I'm being kind of like doing all the separation that we talked about.
Excellent. Getting it done. Johnny B's getting it done.
I always have to do that.
You know, I'm hoping that Solventless Mind comes in today. I did pass him the link, and he was going to come in today while he washed some bubble. So we could I think every hash church, there should be some hash making. That just seems like a good idea.
I got this beside me. I'm actually cooling this room off as you were talking about it. So my old lab room where I had my GC is now my cold room.
Oh, nice.
It's nice in here. It's nice and chilly. I got the microscope sitting right here, and I get to play.
Beautiful. And you're all whited out in the white room. You're in the white room.
I'm in the white room now. It's a nicer room to be in. Plus, I mean, it's quieter in here. I don't have to have the headphones on, and I can work and I can mute you.
I wonder if that's what Eric Clapton was singing about in the white room.
Well, one thing I've seen with all of these labs that we're seeing, they're all white. They're all nice and clean. At least with white, you can see if there's any dirt or anything on the walls or anything like that. So, and it was easy to build this room. It was nice. Everybody needs a hash room.
Awesome.
So that was the goal behind this room in the very beginning. This was my hash room. Before I was going to build a yoga studio and make it a hot, cold room, but instead I built myself a nice little hash room because I'm making hash for the rest of my life, right?
You're going to like Bingo Lombardi's quote, Johnny. Johnny B with the bangin', still. Cheers.
Gotta do this stuff.
That's fucking.
But yeah, I mean, I got my brush, I got my cards, I got all my little tricks and everything else that you guys have showed me, what I've learned over the years from you and everybody else in the industry that has showed me so much. It's pretty cool to see how things are going and what you're doing. Dude, on a huge scale, we talked about that and how people are changing. I was talking with some people, some hemp farmers, and what's going on in Manitoba. That's some pretty crazy stuff, how they're able to start separating everything from the fields now so they can now have those trichomes from the plants.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
pretty amazing what they're doing out there. They got a whole collective, so they're getting all the farmers from all the hemp fields are coming out all in, and they're doing taking it basically to a processing plant, like what you're doing. I think it's pretty cool, and they needed this on an industrial scale, and I think it's the next level of this whole industry is being able to.
We're gonna be that processing plant, or at least one of them.
I know.
I can still remember the first time I was in California, in Central Valley, and Central California, excuse me, and I saw them pulling a harvesting machine, and there was maybe 12 people sitting in a row as it pulled through the rows of beans, and the people that were doing the work were walking in front of this machine, and they would feed it into the machine, everything that they were picking from the beans. In fact, actually, I don't think there was people walking. I think the machine was pulling the beans off of the bean plants and then feeding them to people who were sitting in rows, and they were boxing it. And then the boxes were being quick frozen, not quick frozen, but quick chilled. And then they were being sent to the retailers or the wholesalers all across the nation. But that will be the future with cannabis. It will be picked in the field and quick chilled or frozen, and then sent to a processing plant. And yeah, you'll be at the other end there, Mark, grabbing it.
Woohoo!
Crazy.
With a smile on my face. It's the dream come true. So where are you guys at, Josh and Kelly? Where are you guys at?
We're in Spokane right now. Often we come down here, but where we're at right now as far as the industry goes, and we're just every day in the soil, every day in the greenhouses, every day in our breeding rooms, same thing that we've been doing for the past 26 years. And, although the industry is changing and there's a lot of things that are happening, it's still like we have to keep our focus and what it is that we came here for and how we brought this forward. So it's important, we're keeping our focus on the farm. And there's a lot of, bombs going off everywhere and lots of people giving us offers and all this kind of stuff. But we're just really keeping our head down and really playing the game of humility, because we feel like it's really important, and that's what we need to show the plant every day, is humility.
And we also see that the world is in a clean cannabis shortage. We find that the cultivation needs to be really thought out in order to be like as clean as we all want it to be and stuff. So that's a big part of our work and the certification that we created and working with other ones that are being created too, that are outside of ours. And so we're just working really diligently on clean cultivation.
And yeah, we always free up our education. We were talking about passing information around, and it's actually very rare for humans to have original thought. Humanity doesn't come up with original thought too often, but if we can have good thoughts that we pass around easily and freely, then that's the way that we're going to be able to bring up the whole race of humanity.
Yeah, and Bob Snodgrass told us a really great story one time, which he's such an amazing person, and everything that he's done for glass and everything over the years is his algebra teacher in high school taught him about the bell curve with knowledge that humans all know a certain amount of knowledge, and they're rising up, but the curve is more flat. But once everyone starts sharing information, the knowledge goes up really sharply, and our humanity, and our abilities to do things, gets much greater because we're sharing information. And that's really what
greater involvement.
We evolve, more as a race when we're sharing things with each other. And we feel like that's what we want to be a part of.
Absolutely. I should hook you guys up with Mike West while you're out in Spokane. He just left the chat room, but I'm pretty sure in Spokane.
Yeah, we'd love it. That'd be great. We're here.
Awesome. Well, we got Johnny B sifting. How are you doing today, Wade? Thumbs up. Thumbs up from Wade.
Yeah, I'm doing good, actually. It's the weather's cooled off a little bit here, and the big news in our world at the moment is mixed. On the plus side, the California legislature passed a bunch of bills. Yesterday was their last day, or Friday was the last day of the legislative session for this year. And Senate Bill 829, which we've been pushing pretty hard for, passed out of the Assembly and the Senate and has gone to the governor for a signature. And there were enough yes votes that if he vetoes it, it will go into a law anyway. There were, I think, 2 or 3 out of 60 some in the Assembly, and 2 in the Senate who voted no, and everyone else voted yes. And it allows compassionate use licensing, and not really sure. It's like any law, how the regulations play out is going to have a huge impact on how it actually works. But there's great enthusiasm for it among the regulators. They recognize that legitimate medical need that's not always based on ability to pay is a real thing. And the model in California for a long time has been about giving it away to people who need it. WHAM was one of the first entities I knew of doing that kind of work. And yeah, there were a number of other bills defining premises and whatnot. Anyway, the the state is trying its best to sort out all the problems that have come with regulation in California. On the downside, some of the kids in the network, the kids with epilepsy, including Silas, Forrest's son, are dealing with a lot of seizures right now. Silas had a series of grand mals night before last. And it's not just Silas, it's a number of other kids in the network. So I don't know what's going on in the world, other than the insanity that is going on in the world, that's affecting these kids. But yeah.
How are the fires there? How's the smoke?
The smoke has been good in our area. Several of the big fires are mostly contained. The one that was happening down in southern Mendocino and Lake County, they're pretty much contained it, but it's like 100 and some thousand acres, the biggest fire California's ever had, and it's still early in the fire season. So we're all kind of holding our breath.
I wonder if that could be a part of it, though. Maybe it's not affecting, most people, but
yes.
people that are sensitive like that, with seizures and whatnot. Any little stress on their system can cause that to fire.
Yeah, that would make perfect sense. We humans are uniquely sensitive to our environments. We're very capable of dealing with all kinds of craziness unless we have compromises in our well-being in other areas. And we were doing shout outs earlier to all the people that have helped the plant. I wanted to pipe up and give a shout out to the plant herself for surviving all this prohibition that's been going on, and give thanks to all the humans who have worked with her to see this amazing unveiling of what's possible with this plant. I just feel like with all the craziness that's going on in the world, I mean, my whole life I've been dreaming about, as the Rastas used to say, the herb is the healing of the people. And it's actually happening now. And give thanks for all of us and all of those who have come before us, and to the plant, the amazing, beautiful cannabis, Linnaeus, sativa, indica, ruderalis, etc. That, this plant takes water, soil, and light and turns it into oil. That's a pretty trippy thing. It's, I feel deep, deep, deep gratitude for this plant and its part in my life, and for what I've seen it can do for other people. So that's kind of where Wade's at the moment. Much love to all of you. I'm hanging out and just listening mostly because I'm in awe of the people that gather around you for Hash Church, Marcus. Thank you.
Awesome, Wade. Thanks for your positive words as always. And
hey,
we should.
Marcus. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yes, Mark.
Do you remember? Look who came to visit me. This is Chief Seven Turtles, Scott Sebastian.
Damn.
Who's a champion plant breeder. So don't forget about the plant breeders. Here's one.
I'm moving to Colorado. I finally was able to get the hell out of Iowa, and we're looking for houses right now.
Oh, well, good on you, dude. Welcome to Hash Church. You're in good company.
Yeah. You remember I talked to you like a year or two ago? Two years ago. Probably.
Yeah, you're on maybe like 2 years ago. That's
2 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's amazing that much time's even gone by. These conversations just, people have an interest in them.
So just tell your friends I'm in a legal state now, and I'm interested in all the stuff I learned in industry I can use in cannabis now.
Beautiful. Well, I'm sure you won't have a hard time in Colorado. My God, that place seems to be popping.
What place?
Colorado.
Oh, yeah, God. We looked all over Oregon. We looked in California, and we just keep coming back to Colorado.
Well, it seems like you're not the only ones. That's for sure. Colorado seems to have a growth going on with people interested in the cannabis. It seems like out of all the states, it has some pretty decent regs.
Yeah, it's a mature market. It's a mature market, especially for connoisseur products. Like I think what you see now, very prevalent in the stores. I was in Rare Dankness yesterday and got some live resin, but no slabs. Not, you don't really see shatter anymore. You see a lot more diamonds and sauce, and some solventless, but a lot of diamonds and sauce. People seem to like that product category out here.
Well, it's the hottest of the hot. It's the newest of the new. It's the Instagram fame, right? It's hashtag diamonds. It's like, of course, people are all over that shit. Instagram's kind of trippy how it directs the popularity of what people are going to produce. That and the fact that it's tasty and sweet and gets you super ripped, I guess, are all factors. Speaking of, where's Darren? Oh, there you go. Darren, can you please say your important sentence? He's talking right now. I can see him having a big conversation.
Darren.
Probably got us on mute, actually.
He muted us?
Hey, Darren! Darren!
Bong rip, mother lovers.
Bong rip? Huh? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, my bro brought me a coffee. I just
No problem. You can keep talking to him. I just needed a quick bong rip, mother lovers. That's all.
Bong rip, mother lovers.
Thank you very much.
All right, I'm loading one up.
I'm going to sit here and spend all my time sifting. I'm definitely going to smoke it with Beeline on glass.
There you go.
I was going to say that, it would be nice to see a lot more organic cultivation in Colorado. That's the one thing that is they're a little light on the organic cultivation. So I'd love to see that community get a lot more charged out there.
I think that's a good thing always. That's one of the things I love about Whistler Pemberton, the Whistler Medical. They grow organically. They're, one of the few that are pumping out the OGs, and it's just nice to be around. It's nice to be in rooms that's like made of like soil, not that I'm like dissing on the other options or whatnot, but I will also say that generally, I don't know exactly what the noticeable difference is in the actual resin gland. I'm not sure how much of that is absorbing like pesticides or foliar sprays or whatnot, but definitely I could say that material like that was grown outdoor organically but not flushed and just had like the darkest ash ever. I made hash from it, and it was just like, I smoked it and loved it. It was sweet skunk. And I remember people just complaining. They were like, oh, you got that sweet skunk? I'm like, yeah, it was great. And they were like, really? I was kind of disappointed. And I'm like, well, that's weird. And it took me a while to figure out that they were all smoking the flower and the ash was burning super dark. And I was smoking the hash, and that leaving the food in the plant didn't affect the resin really at all. What do you guys have to say about that?
Oh, well, there's a number of cases where the resin glands do suck up pesticides and fail tests. So there's got to be a giant list of farms that, would really disagree with that statement. However, if their resin glands are clean and nice and they could be really similar, I guess our biggest mission in life is to show that the cultivation of the resin to begin with, there's so much waste that goes into cultivating flowers from rock wool, and there's so much energy use that goes into it that you really, if you want to factor in all of the carbon footprint that goes with it or the trash footprint, you'd have to be really concerned. So that's where we're at. I mean, it's the amount of, like, every single time you grow something out of those large scale operations out of rock wool, you have to throw all that away. And so, I mean, it's, on all the tubes, it's people do it.
And I think that, there is so much that we don't know about cannabis still. Now we're just being able to get funding to be able to do the testing and to be able to understand what it is that we're looking for. And I do believe that, I'm hoping that cannabis will have the last laugh, that it can't be, controlled in the same way that tobacco has been controlled. Tobacco was taken over, the plant's totally in control, and it was like the big corporations got a hold of it, and then no more real studies and tests really came out of it after that as far as organic cultivation. And I feel like, maybe she will have the last laugh in that she produces a lot of cannabinoids and terpenes and things that she produces into herself when she's really happy and in a soil situation. So,
and we also like believe in origins, and we really resonate with like Wade and what he has to say, bigging up the plant and the origins of the soil and the earth and all that. And for us, that's what we recognize. You know, we recognize the naturalness, and we recognize the plant in its full potential. So some of the organic growers, they need to, maybe they flush to make their ash look better for people and stuff. But in the end of the day, you know, if they're doing a really, you know, conscious grow and stuff, you know, it does have to burn correctly for the consumer and all that. But, you know, if it's bad for the earth, but it smokes well, I just don't see that as a good thing.
No, I feel you. Absolutely. I'm definitely not, you know, stoked on the use of pesticides, even though, you know, 99.9% of people eat it on their food for almost every single meal that they have, as well as the clothes that they wear, as well as the vehicles that they drive, as well as it's just so saturated into our system. I would love to see us get rid of as many of these things as possible and create a more sort of synergistic, symbiotic experience for the world. It doesn't seem sustainable, to say the least, to continue to poison everything on such a mass scale that you know, we cause pollution and great disruptions in our oceans and our nature cycles. But it is what it is, you know.
I think that's the point.
We're such a reactionary society, you know. In America, we don't do anything until we're not proactive. We're reactionary. Just like when you see a salmonella outbreak or any of those things, they go after the processor, they go after the farm, but they don't change the general overall problem. Like in Japan, there's 0.00 parts per million of any kind of fecal or any kind of microbial matter. In South Korea, there's 0.3 and 0.03, and then in Europe, it's 0.5. So, but in America, it's 5,000 parts per million. So we really live in a super toxic society, being able to make money and turn a profit at our expense. So I believe that organics is the only way to go. The small farmer, we really have to work on home grow. Home grow really concerns me. They're going to try to get rid of it in every state. They've been successful here in Washington. And they're going to stay near you. I mean, without the home grow and the small farmer, you know, and people out there, there's no new thing, you know, such a massive scale. I like to focus on smaller scale. I've been teaching a class at Clark College here in Vancouver, Cannabis in Your Health, and then I do a How Growers Do It. It's a 3-hour intensive on taking your plants to harvest for highest yield. And I really love to show everybody the clean organic route to go. There's no reason we shouldn't be taking that route. It's better for the environment, you know. And then we got the doob tube thing and the Mylar bags, and how bad are those? They're choking out our oceans. You can't get rid of them. I find them in my ditches out here in the country. I mean, it's really, really, really bad. And, you know, as cannabis and stewards of the land, we really need to put our best foot forward. And I really believe the growers who care about it and the processors who really care about it are putting their product in glass jars, and they're using biodegradable packaging. And I just, that is a must as we continue on, or we're just going to destroy our planet Earth even more.
That's true for sure. You know, it's kind of right there, it's the quiver of access, in the sense of we need exactly what you're teaching, that small scale, you know, scalability, where people are doing it for themselves, but it's just never going to happen for everyone. It's going to be a percentage of people that do it that way. So then we also need large scale, and that can't be done in a toxic level. It has to be done in a way that's like, we're smart enough to figure it out. There's no reason why scalability has to be a bad thing. I just think it should never phase out small scale. Small scale should always have a place in the cannabis industry. I always want to have my own garden in the back. I always want to be able to process my own stuff a variety of ways at home. But at the same time, I know so many people out there who that's never going to be the reality for them ever. Just the way they don't raise their own chickens to eat eggs every morning, just the way they don't make their own clothes from their, you know, nettle that they grow in their backyard. It's just, there's both sides need to exist. And, you know, like people like my mom, for example, like she is most comfortable ordering her cannabis from a large scale facility. It's just comfortable to her. She just goes online, she gets it done, she feels good about it. She's not opposed to going into dispensaries, but she's worked for the police for 35 years. So the law is a big part of it as well. But I just see both sides being fairly valid. As you know, I'm sitting here going, I want to go as large as I can. And Tom's like, I want to teach small scale. I totally respect what you're saying, but think that large scale has its place as well to give people.
Well, there's room for all of us. We all have our space in this cannabis world. You know, everybody has their own little position, and it takes all of us to get this plan and to get this industry in the right place where it's actually benefiting people and benefiting the planet.
Well, that's definitely a big part of it. You know, we want it to be more positive and beneficial in that sense, that there are a lot of people. Just think of the amount of pesticides that have been sprayed on cannabis alone, even in the black market over the last 4 or 5 decades. That is a lot of pesticides.
Or even wine. They just did a case study on 100 different wines in California. And this is one thing that we're not testing for in cannabis because, which is glyphosate. And 100% of those tests came out with, really high levels of glyphosate. That's not part of our pesticide levels. When people go and bring their cannabis in, they're not testing for glyphosate. When you go and you bring your soil sample in, you have to pay extra to get a glyphosate test. And we really encourage people to do glyphosate tests because their amendments may be OMRI certified, but they may be still spraying glyphosate, say on their alfalfa that they can buy in bulk. And if you utilize that in large amounts on your soil, then you're going to start having massive microbiology die-off, which is really huge. And that's something that then goes up into the flower. So
wouldn't glyphosate kill the plant though?
What?
Wouldn't glyphosate just kill the plant?
No, glyphosate doesn't kill the plant. Glyphosate is utilized in, say, maybe, if you're buying large amounts of alfalfa and that you want to feed your plants. We're not talking about using
glyphosate on the ganja.
No,
we're talking about the inputs that come in that we use for the ganja.
Mm-hmm. And we're finding we're doing massive tests on a lot of these inputs that people think are organic or think that are natural or think that are whole foods, and they're coming out really high in glyphosate levels. And then we get calls from some people and we're saying, hey, our soil is becoming acidic over time. What's going on? And then we look all the way through it and we find out, wow, this alfalfa that you've been adding on weekly has glyphosate in it and is killing your microbiology, which in turn is making your soil acidic.
Yeah.
So it's not just looking at like the finished product, what goes into it, what creates the finished product, how can we be responsible from the very first ripple that we do on our farms?
I think, Marcus, you made a good point. I mean, toxicity is everywhere, and Tom, and the toxicity is everywhere. And so when we have an opportunity to choose something, we're going to choose the natural thing because we're already inundated with all the toxins everywhere. And I think about, Grass Valley and stuff down there. I mean, charcoal and carbon in the air is going to suck out all the toxins in the air, and then it's going to fall on people and they're going to be breathing in carbon that it's known to suck up toxins. That's why you take activated charcoal every day to flush the toxins out of your body and stuff. So, we just believe, toxicity in cannabis and toxicity in life is probably our biggest work. I mean, we love growing and cultivating everything, but like talking about the toxicity, it's a big thing, and it's something we really
and when you start to delineate and you really look at what it is that you're eating or what it is that you're putting in your gardens, like you were saying, Marcus, toxicity is everywhere. But if we can do our very best and do our research and talk to the people who are already doing a good job in organics and how they're doing it and share information, then we can bring this plant up. And I do believe that, like Wade, you were saying, we do need to have, give big ups to the plant. It's important. She's brought us all the way this far, and we're having, a relationship together. It's an equal relationship, the plant and the human. And how is it that we can do the best by the plant so she can do the best by us?
Well, I think that's one of the beauties of the Dragonfly Earth Medicine approach. Closed loop systems, like if you're talking about alfalfa, instead of buying alfalfa that's likely been treated with various things like glyphosate, buy alfalfa seed and put it in the ground and get it so it's self-seeding. And meantime, your compost streams, everything, by generating your own inputs on the farm. And of course, you can only do this if you have enough space and a place to do it. But I think anybody that can have a garden where you can grow tomatoes, you can grow beautiful cannabis. And you can do it responsibly in the way that you guys talk about closed loop systems, you know, worms, your own compost piles, ferments, mushrooms. It's about restoring the environment in the place that you're working. It's not about, cannabis can be a resource extraction industry, or it could be a resource rebuilding environment.
And that's the regenerative aspect of it, we feel. Yes.
Yeah, and it is true, you know, like in getting to what you add onto your soils and what you're adding into your reservoirs or whatever to find out where those come from. And like you were saying, Wade, yeah, closed loop systems, you know 100% where it came from. And I want to remind everybody, you know, we did a numbers game a few years ago on how much each one of our plants, you know, cost us to be able to grow. And we grow huge, massive monsters that put out a whole lot of pounds, you know, and for BC, that's a lot. And we spent $24 on each plant. $24.
And
so, you know, that really takes a lot of the stress out of.
And that's how you stay in business.
Yeah.
Another thing is, let's not forget what we know about the plant. Let's not forget what we learned. What we learned, it's a remediating plant. It sucks up what's in the earth. So we have to be seriously careful what we put in there if we want the clean, safe access that we all are talking about.
And our peer certification is where it sets people up. It's not just a certification to put rules and regulations on people by any means. It's being able to give farmers the tools that they can pass their concentrates, that they pass their flowers, so that when they go to market that they're successful. It's not something that's like, here's a list of a bunch of things, good luck, you know.
And they're feeding their mind with healthy food that they're growing on the farm. It's true. The food is covered in myclobutanol. You can get strawberries right now and test, and there's myclobutanol on it. The problem with myclobutanol is the smoking of it and it turning into cyanide. But yes, it is a thing, and that's why we're passionate about it. And we're working in Canada now too, and starting to create dialogue about, you know, a new co-op and new and answers to the Bill C-45 and what's happening in Canada. And it is our work to combine like-minded people here in Canada and create a new system that can be recognized, you know, for the people of Canada, so that some people that want the LP and the large scale operations can buy that from them, and no one's trying to get rid of that, and no one will be able to get rid of it. But we're also trying to keep that conscious culture of the herb. The herb is a natural thing that makes our minds open and makes us want to feel good.
And safe access, it's so important. You know, we talk about safe access, and safe access doesn't mean just, you know, being able to access it, but that it is safe. And people who have medical issues, which, you know, I'm sorry to say, but we're looking at a massive amount of people on this planet that have medical issues. It's very rare that I meet people that, you know, are even eating organically and running every day that are not having issues. You know, with the amount of toxins that are in the air, we really owe it to those people to give them good, safe, clean access.
And I think it's really important that we educate these people and educate these big industry people that organics is a cheaper route. It is a more sustainable route. At the end of the day, people are going to be looking for that clean organic route. There's no doubt about it. It's all about people's health. The more toxic the earth gets, the more toxic we get, the more things everybody's looking for the answer. And cannabis is, but it's got to be clean, organic cannabis. And it really starts, like you said, with the inputs and knowing the sources and the whole way through, the genetics, how it's been handled, the whole way through. But, you know, in education, we can really change things at a big level.
Yeah, I guess the big problem is the profit margins. You know, it's that people are locked into these profit margins in the now, and I think that, you know, I don't exactly know how to put it into words, but you just always see, especially with the scalability, where people are just like, we're doing it this way now, and just like spraying all these harsh pesticides. It's just unbelievable how much.
And all the
Well, look at the price of
all
organic
the salts
food.
that. Oh yeah, it's out of this world, and all the salts and these salt mixtures that are putting in there, and it's just you can really taste the end product. At least I can, you know what I mean? And I'm open to smoking a lot of cannabis, but I always kind of like mine, you know, because I grew it and I took care of it, and I think everybody should be able to, on some kind of scale, if they have the desire, to be able to grow their own, and then you really know what's going on it. You know, it's been our lifestyle. My wife, you know, has immune system problems her whole life, and we found a farm with good, clean well water, and where we can pretty much take care of ourselves through cannabis and all the vegetables we grow and fruits and stuff. And it's a full cycle for us, and it really keeps her healthy. She's healthier now than she's ever been in her life. And that she's out there working side by side with me in the garden day in and day out. She's an amazing woman. And I'm really happy. I think a lot of people are going to know that, you know, the clean organic lifestyle is going to be the healthiest way if you really want to live a long, healthful life.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And also, you know, unfortunately, a lot of these big corporations that are coming into the cannabis industry right now are looking towards big ag to be their educator. And I'm sorry, but when has big ag had good ideas? They've taken all of our soils, they've ruined it, and they're the ones that are saying, we know better. It's not interesting, and they don't know better. And it's unfortunate that a lot of these big corporations are not looking towards maybe the cannabis farmers that have been doing this for a really long time. They're going straight and direct to Department of Ags and agricultural education, which to me is just dumbing us down. And I don't have a place for it.
No, me neither. I mean, I've been able to educate a lot of people along the way on organics. You know, we had the federal government here, 7 agents from the CDC, and I got to educate them on production and processing of organic cannabis and how we do it here on our farm. And, you know, that's opened up a lot of opportunities for me to get out there and keep educating about organics and the sustainable ways, because like I said, at the end of the day, we got to live here. And organics is the only way, and sustainability is the only way I see us getting out alive.
I have a question for Chief Seven Turtles. What kind of breeding is it that you want to do with cannabis?
Hey, hold on a second. We were just talking. So everyone knows Chief Seven Turtles from Sensimilia Tip Days. Scott, you wrote what?
If you live in Oregon, you probably heard of Sensimilia Tips. It was one of the first journals back in the 80s. And I wrote like 3 articles on breeding, just basic stuff. But the one was about reciprocal recurrence selection. But anyhow, to answer your question, I've already given 2 talks at the University of Wisconsin about like what they do, you know, how we use, you know, how we did breeding in industry. And then how I would apply, and then the second seminar was about how I would apply that to cannabis, and it was packed. Both seminars were packed, and they said it was the first seminar ever given on cannabis breeding at the university, because it's still illegal there, and it was really interesting 2 days. But, you know, this has nothing to do with...
Well, can you describe the technique?
So basically, this has nothing to do with organic versus pesticide. It's breeding. It's how to make better selection decisions. And basically, the techniques I learned were how to pick the best plant, even if it's in the wrong part of the field and it doesn't... Like if you select it by its genetics, you'll pick the right plant regardless if it's not been nurtured properly, you know? And I can explain all that stuff to you guys later. I have a whole seminar about it, and I'm going to try to give it this week at the University of Colorado. Mark's going to hook me up.
Colorado State,
which is where they do the hemp breeding and all that. But
in Fort Collins, Colorado. Yeah.
But I wouldn't knock industry too much because they're like 10 years ahead of of everybody else in terms of how to use molecular markers. And that's what my specialty was. And it was all native traits. I didn't do any transgenics or any of that.
I understand exactly what you're talking about, but from molecular markers or genetic markers for breeding from cannabis, there's hardly any of them identified yet. But yes, that will be the future. I agree.
It's being, from what I heard through the grapevine, all the traits are being mapped right now at private companies. They're not sharing all the information because it's not, it's not legal.
They're trying to develop intellectual property.
Yeah, they're trying to develop intellectual, but I guarantee you there's enough people working on this that somebody is going to set up a company that will just genotype, and they'll do it really cheaply, and they'll do the whole genome, not just like specific traits. And you'll be able to, like I said earlier, it would take a long time to describe it, but it's very, very efficient and very smart technology. And it's
Does Phylus Bioscience do that?
What's that?
Doesn't Phylus Bioscience?
Phylus has already done the fingerprinting, so they can tell this is different from this. But the next step is this is better than this,
Like what they do with cows.
Yeah, and all this stuff is
so functional genomics.
It's just genetic. It's called marker-assisted selection, or MASS.
Yeah,
and
where you just take a smear of each plant, and you can tell from that smear whether it's more appropriate for the particular genes you're looking for.
Yeah. And my specialty was complex traits like yield, and that you have to handle in a different way because there's not like specific yield genes. There are yield genes, but they have a different effect in every background. So you have to study each background separately. And that's that knowledge is not well known, not even in industry. This was something that was top secret when I was working at Pioneer, and I'm finally allowed to talk about it because I published a couple papers on it, and so now I can talk about it. But it wasn't easy to let them to get permission to talk about it.
Do you have the rights to use that?
I'll explain it to everybody. I read your papers.
Good. I'm glad you read them, man.
I've probably already patented your process too.
No, I'm not patenting things. I
patented it. He said
he patented your process.
Okay, did you? Power to you, man. So I mean, I've been waiting for 2 years to do this, but I married a Brazilian, and it took us 2 years to get us permanent residency, and now we finally can move to a cool state. Iowa's terrible. Iowa's just doing as little as they possibly can.
Yeah, but it's great for corn, isn't it?
Corn and soybeans.
I personally
Genetically modified corn.
Yeah, I mean, my program at Pioneer was native traits, like not using transgenics, because it doesn't always make sense. Sometimes the genes are out there. You don't have to pull them out of another species, and that's still 90% of plant breeding is still that. What you hear is like the transgenic stuff is still only a small part. It's the pesticides that are the problem, not the genes. Because you put a gene in
together.
They
go together.
They're bred to handle lots of pesticide.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. Totally.
They control the disease and they control the medicine.
And the other thing I know from growing soybeans in the greenhouse, it's not easy to grow them organically. You really have to control things. And I grew wheat organically, but on a very small scale. And I had fans going to prevent the fungi from taking hold and all that stuff. But I'm really excited to actually dive into this now because I've been waiting.
Yeah, he's kind of like me. He's an industry retread. I mean, like when you guys, Josh and Kelly, I love you. I love everything that you guys do. everything you say is so scientifically right on. It's so like you guys are even connected and with the scientific underpinning of everything that you say. And I just wanted to go back to your comment about industry again. Yeah, I used to be at work some big bad chemical company that I probably shouldn't have worked at, but that's how I met this guy, right? And we still and what brought us together? Do you remember what brought us together? Music,
Guitars,
guitar, right? Guitar, music. Jerry Garcia brought us together, and now we have a champion soybean breeder who said au revoir industry and jumping into the cannabis world. And it's just we need more people like me and Scott, you know.
The truth of it is, of course, because if you believe that cannabis can rejuvenate and revitalize and improve everybody's life, well, that includes big industry. Let's get big industry involved with cannabis, so hopefully it will improve all of their lives, including the industry itself.
Well said, Sam.
That would be
Absolutely.
sweet.
I love
We
that.
hope it happens. Woohoo!
And you know, Mark, honestly, you got to wonder, was it Jerry Garcia that originally brought you guys together, or was it weed? You know, it's like often the first conversation is, yeah, it's like the cannabis that brings it together. And I just love that. It really is true that not only is it, you know, remediating the soil, but it's remediating our minds. You know, so many of us are able to have these conversations in depth and be able to see all different parts of the wheel because our mind has been remediated by this amazing plant.
I think it's really awesome how mysterious and unbelievable the ganja plant is and how many layers. Like, you can't just transgenic it. You can't just genetically, you can't just, the heads and the whatever, the cryogen, it doesn't matter. It's so deep and so technical that the greatest of minds are just racking themselves over it, and the plant's just like, give me some sun. I love it.
It is a beautiful thing. I like that conversation. To go back to Mark and the chief there, we could do a whole hash church on this and invite some of the people from Segra that have built a molecular biology lab and are also looking into doing that work. We could invite Kevin McKernan. We could invite Mowgli from. We could have a really great conversation. Have Sam, of course. That would be a good 3 to 4 hour one. I was even thinking, I don't know what your seminar is, but you should definitely come do it on Bubble Man's World. We'd love to share.
Well,
that.
I have 2 seminars, and they both take about an hour. So
that's nothing.
You know, and one is you know, basically what I did in soybean, and it would really change. It was a big breakthrough, and but the same thing will work in cannabis. It's just another crop, you know. The difference is the second seminar is about how cannabis is different from other crops and how that affects the strategy. You know, the
tweaking of the IP.
What's that?
Like how you would tweak the IP that works for soybeans to make it work with cannabis.
Yeah, and in fact, cannabis is a lot easier because of the fact that you can, once you have a plant you like, you can just clone it. It's not that easy in soybean. You know, you got to inbreed it and fix it for all the traits, and it's like an 8-year process. You know,
Jesus,
because you got to test it. Well, in soybean, it has to be better, and it has to be tested across 100 different environments, or nobody's going to buy it. So that's
what you're talking about for a 4-seed variety.
Yeah, anything
would be juice blown. That's one thing. But if you want a 4-seed variety, it's even longer than 8 years, probably.
Yeah. Like if you can do some. Sam knows this. You can do some inbreeding. Did you say that you got to F3?
No, we got to F4. And a few cases in F5, but it really fucks up the plants. Every negative recessive trait pops up, and it has absolutely no health, no vigor, and in most cases it's functionally sterile, which means the pollen, although it still can be transferred by Q-tip it doesn't adhese, and it's sticky or something like that. So it's impossible to breed with without extra care.
Well, so most soybean varieties, even though they were supposedly inbred, they were F3 derived. So they still had a lot of segregation, even though all the plants look the same. And it's probably going to be the same thing in cannabis.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll be F2 derived, but you'll select phenotypically so that it looks uniform, but you're never going to get it genetically homozygous. It would die before that.
And are you familiar with Alan Capular's work, or AKA Mushroom? He's got like the largest soybean collection in the world, and has done amazing amounts of work with the genome and all different kinds of things with soybeans.
Well, the world collection that I used to use was at Champaign, Illinois. It had like 30,000 different accessions, and I've tapped it several times, screened it for various traits, and I actually came up with some really cool, like some wild soybeans that I have a patent on a fartless soybean.
The soybean that doesn't make you fart.
Fartless soybean. It doesn't give you gas. And it was just a mutant that didn't produce stachyos. Stachyos is what makes you fart. But it never really made it to the market because it was only worth as pig feed or chicken feed, it was only worth 50 cents more a bushel, and it cost 50 cents just to keep it separate. So the identity preservation costs are 50 cents. So you lose all the value because you have to keep it separate, keep it in separate elevators and da-da-da-da-da. So like economics plays a big role in what makes it the market, but that's going to
wow. How economics affects farting.
Yeah. It's like, well, we don't really care if the pigs fart if it's not worth more than 50 cents.
Damn. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's methane with fartless beans, though. Come on.
Yeah, that's what's screwing up the atmosphere. Methane. That's way worse than CO2. It's like 10 times worse than carbon dioxide.
Shout out Faded AF, who said that Gold Avenue is less methane with fartless beans. That's pretty hilarious. That's just funny that you just never know what's going to come up in conversation on Hash Church.
But I mean, like cannabis is a plant breeder's dream because you're in the infancy. There's tons of variation. It's like the coolest plant to work on, I think. And it's medicine, it's food, it's fiber, it's good for the soil. It's unbelievable that it's illegal. I mean, I just can't. That shows you.
Well, that's why it's illegal. All the things you just said are exactly why it's illegal.
But there's all these people like us that are just so passionate about it. We can't believe it. It keeps us up at night, So I was like, I gotta go to a cool state, man.
There's 600 people or 560 people watching right now just for us to talk about this very thing. There's a lot of people worldwide, and it's growing more and more and more as I see people developing a relationship outside of that strip of prohibition that we all the most passionate seem to be like, you really have to push through that prohibition thing. It's like, so this is going to endanger my life, my family, my freedom, my safety, like all of these things. It's a big thing to step through that veil and sort of own all of that, to be a cannabis person in the last 30, 40, 50 years. And now we're entering this new level where I think there's some of the animosity comes from people from the community, the old school community, where they see these people coming in that have not had to step through that veil. And personally, I say stop resenting people for not having to step through that veil, because that's the whole point of our activism for the last 50 plus years, was to remove that veil so that people could step freely through it. And it doesn't matter if they haven't been involved in the industry for 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 years. It's okay. They can still come and put their hat in the ring and do their thing. And I'm excited to see that sort of opening. It's sort of like now we're, instead of breeding with like 100 or 1,000, we're opening it up to the millions, to hundreds of thousands. The numbers are just so great that we're going to pull some great people into this into this industry.
Yeah, I've been criticized because I was looking forward to the inclusion of everybody in the cannabis industry. So that means if somebody used to be a prison guard and now they'd rather grow herb, so be it. I mean, isn't it better for them to grow herb than be a prison guard or a policeman?
Straight up. I'm in the same agreement. And I also get criticized for it when they're like, now they're coming in to take over the industry. It's like, no, they're just coming in to be a part of the industry. We're not going to let anyone take anything. We're the ones that our own civil disobedience is the thing. That's why we're so protective of our baby, I guess, because civil disobedience that's opened up this avenue. Now it's just a matter of maintaining some proper stewards. You know, Hillary Black, she gets people on her all the time because she works for Canopy. And it's like, I love having Hillary Black in the ear of Canopy. I could not picture a better person to be in the, you know, I heard recently Canopy is now bigger than like Air Canada and WestJet combined. Two of our big airlines in Canada. This is a cannabis company and they have Hillary Black in their ear. I have my money on Hillary over Canopy in that conversation. She's just too sweet. She'll just infect them with sweetness and her positivity and the way she's always been a real proper stewardess of the plant, you know, of the highest integrity.
And I don't think that we've brought it this far to not educate people on it. You know, I think that it's totally important that new people are coming and being involved. But I think that we can take all of what we've learned in the past 40 years and bring it forward to make it more, you know, viable for the industry to go forward and have success.
I would hope it would be more respect. I go to a lot of conferences, and I went to one last week, and they really look down on the pioneers. I was sitting next to a table of people talking, and I overheard them say, wow, you're a true pioneer. You've been in the industry for 4 years. And I was just like, I had to speak up. I went, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's hold on a minute now. There's been people doing this 40, 50 years. People are dedicated. My friends went to jail. They died. Also, you would have the honor of doing this. And you don't know me or you don't know any of these people and what they've done. You know, before you throw a broad spectrum, you know, diss on our whole community and all the people that got you here, you know, let's step back and you should respect us a little bit more. So it's a two-edged sword out there. We don't, you know, I'm open. I love all the science that's come into the industry. It really, you know, raises the bar and puts it into a whole nother international level. I love that part, but just a little respect from some of the people out there towards the pioneers would be, you know, highly appreciated.
Well, that goes back to perspective. It's kind of when you hear like a 14-year-old kid said, remember back in the day? And that was like 3 years ago, because that's what his perspective is. And it's a perfect example of even how you framed it, was like your friends went to jail, your friends died. Well, that's still a very small perspective when you go back some centuries to people that were being flogged and murdered and killed over this plant. This has been happening for so much longer than any of us have been alive, that it's a real thing. Like this prohibition of cannabis goes back way beyond our friends and family, way beyond 40 or 50 years. It goes far back for these countries to have produced these plants, these Sufis to have gone through the torture that they went through for eating hashish, like all of these different histories. It would be great to have Chris Bennett in the room right now, because he'd bust out an accurate description of all of these things. But, you know, those guys are also a part of that pioneering that maybe we don't give credit to enough. So now we can easily see why maybe the next group isn't giving credit easily enough. It's all about our perspective and how it's framed in the timeline that we've existed in. And so I agree with you on one level, and on the other level, I just see it as a natural cycle of humans, that we ourselves, as the apparent pioneers in this particular 40 to 50 year run, are maybe also forgetting the last 50 before us and the 100 years before that, and you know, these cultivars they've come a long way, these plants. These are not yesterday's plants.
People have only been smoking cannabis for about 500 years. Before that, because smoking is a new world invention. Cannabis was an old world invention. So Columbus had to mix the two up before we started smoking.
But there was prohibition. There was prohibition in the eating of cannabis too.
Oh, absolutely. The Garden of Copper in Egypt. I think it was 1350 or something like that. Like you said, if they caught you, they would give you rotten milk, make you drink it, and if you threw up green from eating hashish, then they pulled your teeth out.
Oh, that's just nuts.
And there's 5,000 years. It goes back as a moxibustion. Cannabis was used to burn in moxibustion, and you can see that in the old ancient Chinese health texts. And if they were burning it, then it was all around the patient. So
the Scythians did that as well, didn't they? Aren't they one of the oldest? Once again, I wish Chris was here because he's just got such a great grasp on
the Scythians were doing it 2,000. The Chinese maybe 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. Yeah, the Scythians, what they did was they threw flowering cannabis on top of embers in a fire underneath the tent. They got in the tent with it. And according to Herodotus, they screamed with joy.
The hot boxing right there. That's some old school hot boxing just a couple thousand years ago. So hopefully, yes, we should always, you know what, and that also comes just with ignorance when you don't know something. People saying, oh, you're a pioneer, you've been in this industry for 4 years. Because I have to admit, Tom, I've heard that as well. But from my perspective, I honestly, my natural reaction to it was that I chuckled. I wasn't offended at all. I just thought like, oh, it was just funny, right? Because it's like, I know something they don't. And I can't be mad at them because they don't know. They're just coming in with this really narrow slice of the pie. But potentially, and we all started somewhere, in 40 or 50 years, they could get to where a lot of us are and be in a position to help educate the next round of young, ignorant bucks that are.
Some of us are really lucky. I happened to be there when cannabis was invented in 1953.
Oh, God. Do you guys ever check out? Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying that I think the industry, everything's just changing so fast. Like, I think it's almost like a modern issue. It's just like, what do we even know about 2 years ago? Seems like forever ago. I mean, on certain levels. It's
we don't have to ask the pioneers. Google it. It's so simple. The 14-year-olds do know everything because all they have to do is ask a question and they can Google it. So it's like
we don't need elders anymore.
Instant response, and it's very symptomatic. I feel like you have a question, you can have it answered. Well, that's a really symptomatic response. It's like, what are the roots that go all the way down to that possible question? And it is a real issue with society today.
And I would say, just even looking at the hemp industry, I mean, 2 years ago it was like a revelation that you could get CBD isolate. Well, now it's a revelation that you just take the THC out of it. It's like, oh, you just have CBD isolate. Oh, that's a thing of the past. We want the full spectrum, no THC.
You're so out of the loop.
Like that thing. Oh, okay. Anyway, I think it's interesting how fast things are changing.
Agreed. It's definitely.
Oh man, I have to ask you a question.
Please do.
I saw your video about when you went to Jamaica and you were looking for all the fields where you were doing selections. And you found that one field where everything looked more uniform and you were selecting the best females. Do you still have that seed?
I have most of those seeds. Yeah, I have seeds that go way back before videos too, from around 95, 96 in Jamaica.
And so there was this other guy that I talked to in Oregon, and he got this strain from Africa called Malawi, I think it was.
Nice.
Malawi, yeah.
Malawi. He said it was supposed to be the most potent. The only problem is it's very late maturing. So he bought some seeds and he's breeding it to be earlier maturing. But I guess if you're growing indoors, that doesn't matter, right? You can pretty much do that with lights, right?
Yeah, or if you're just taking it to a tropical place like Jamaica, doesn't.
But I was really impressed with that video because that's exactly what plant breeders do that do native traits. You go to a place like that, and you you just start collecting stuff, and that field of all those females that you showed, that's what turned me on to plant breeding, to see the genetic diversity right in front of your face. And those were intermated, right? So they were like a population.
Absolutely.
But they still had tons of diversity.
Oh yeah, well, Jamaica is this crazy inbred island of cannabis cultivars. It's hard to find those pure. I don't want to say landrace because even they were brought there from most likely India. But some of those older narrow leaf drug cultivars, those tall ones, that's what I was always looking for. But of course, most of what you end up finding is these short stacked single bud.
Deep seven turtles, you were just talking about going someplace and collecting seeds. You can't do that anymore. That's illegal. That's called biopiracy.
Well, there's enough diversity now, I think, to keep us going for a while.
No, that's not true. But
Not true?
I would say 3/4 of the gene pool out there was at least partially collected. But no, it's not collected.
Is anybody selecting for disease resistance?
No, it's the next phase in cannabis breeding.
Yeah, well,
People have not focused on it yet, partly because of population sizes maybe you need for that, and also because it's a little bit more sophisticated breeding than just breeding for
Just go into anyone's grow room and you can see that people have not focused on disease-resistant cultivars as of yet.
Well, sometimes you have to go back to really wild stuff to get it because the gene pool has been so bottlenecked. But
Guaranteed.
In fact, the exact opposite is what's actually true. Since the introduction of wide leaf drug varieties.
Thank you for. I know a little bit. If you select for just drug types, that's what you're gonna get.
Well, no, it's even different than that. That the narrow leaf, the equatorial, tropical narrow leaf drug varieties, they have high resistance to mold and powdery mildew and that kind of stuff. Whereas materials from Afghanistan up in the mountains, they don't have any resistance to it. And when you bring them down to areas where there are those problems, your plants and the hybrids of those plants have serious problems with powdery mildew.
Yeah,
And
that's for sure.
That's where we can really listen to the plant and what it is that the genetics are telling us and where the genetics have come from. And I do believe that lots of small-time growers for a very long time have been breeding for pesticide, for pest issues and for fungi issues for a very long time. So there are small breeders out there that have been doing it a super long time. I realize that that may not be like the large industry, big breeding, but there are a lot of amazing varieties out there that are totally resistant to pests and fungi.
And they're going through maybe hundreds of seeds, in their field.
Maybe 1,000.
Maybe 1,000, and then they go through and only pollinate the ones that look the best. And I mean, who's going to go up to a plant and pollinate something with powdery mildew all over it? I mean, okay, so it happens, but that person is not really working with.
Yeah. Well,
and I believe that those years of expertise that people have been doing, in their small gardens does have a play in the breeding industry moving forward.
Right. Well, just to give you a clue what I mean by diversity, in order to find some traits that I was looking for, I screened like 15,000 different accessions and found one that had the fartless trait. I mean, so you have to make a commitment if you want to do that breeding. And I'm guessing the reason the narrow leaf ones are more disease resistant to fungi is because air moves through the canopy better. We saw that in soybean. Like there's narrow leaf soybeans.
Well, it's partly that, and partly the other thing is that they come from an environment that's wet, humid, and hot, and wet, and humid, and hot. And if they don't have natural resistance, they're going to cease to exist as a variety.
Right. Powdery mildew is actually pretty common in a lot of resistance genes are not hard to find in a lot of crops. I don't know about cannabis yet because I never looked for it, but it should be easy to find because it's an obligate parasite. It evolved with the plant. It can only live on that plant and maybe one wild other, so when you have a situation like that, the host develops resistance genes very quickly. So they're out there. You just got to look for them.
I have not seen very much.
I've grown thousands of Afghan seeds that I imported from Afghanistan many different times. And let me tell you, in general, they have zero resistance to powdery mildew.
Do they all have broad leaves?
Yes, of course.
That's what I was saying. It's the narrow leaf.
But if you have one plant growing in the middle of a whole bunch of narrow leaf plants, that one gets mildewy and all the rest of them don't. It's not density. What you're saying is partly, but that's not the core reason. The core reason is they don't have any genetic resistance to these pests and diseases.
Also, I think that we're seeing a tremendous, non-resistant and variety of different types of leaf mildews. It's real easy to say, oh, it's PM or oh, it's DM, but we're seeing a tremendous amount of different types of mildews that are landing on plants, and I don't see it any different than humans. I see a candida infection exactly the same inside of a human as I would see on a plant, and we're seeing humans, much less of a healthy microbiome in the same way that we're seeing unhealthy microbiome in plants. It has to do with the toxicity, whatever they're spraying up in the atmosphere, whatever is going into our soils, whatever is going into the water systems is really, bringing down the immune response. And I think that is something that, the reason why it's such a huge conversation, PM, everybody that you talk to in the industry is talking about this. There's a reason why. It has to do with genetics, it has to do with environment, and it has to do with the time that we're living right now. So we're seeing more and more people affected in their microbiome, more soil affected in the microbiome, and more plants affected in the microbiome. So we have to be smarter than that. We have to clean up our act, and we have to produce genetics that are immune to these things.
Sam, were you able to produce any soils or any ways to enhance the immune system to create a
organic growing in general, biodynamic organic growing in general does that really a lot. But I'd like to repeat that if I'm growing huge amounts of narrow leaf plants, none of them are getting mildew. I grow a few of the Afghan ones in with them, and they all do.
Yeah, they're like magnets for it, for sure. I mean, it does, you don't really have to be a plant breeder to understand that one comes from a super dry, arid area and has never encountered powdery mildew before.
It doesn't have natural resistance.
And the other is grown in the tropical, like super humid, super hot environment, like where if you put an Afghan there, just go to Jamaica and see. They put those Afghan and they just get powdery mildew. It's crazy.
And we could say the same as somebody who's been living up in Siberia their entire life and then bring them to the tropics and what kind of things come out of them, what their body is totally used to, what their genetics are used to. And then it's really amazing because I do work in large clinics in tropical areas, and a lot of the doctors or nurses or midwives that come down into that area, they get really sick because they've been dealing with like cold environment for a long time, and talk about all different types of mildews and fungi that will come out of them to be able to acclimate. It's amazing. I don't see us any different than the plants.
True that, for sure. I definitely, from traveling, I saw it a lot. Just people going to countries they'd never been to, far off countries, and picking up weird viruses, weird little sicknesses.
And that's all because of the microbiome. and how much it changes from region to region. And that microbiome is inside of the genetics. It's inside of the seed as much as it, you know, is resistant or non-resistant when it grows out into a plant.
True enough. Well, shit. 2.5 hours. Not too bad. You guys want to keep going? You want to call it a day? How's everyone feeling?
Scott's got to get going, so I'm going to say goodbye to Scott.
I have to go check into my Airbnb.
Ah, the Airbnb. Well, I've texted Mark to put us in touch with one another. I have some more questions for you. I want to keep in touch.
Good.
So,
thanks a lot, you guys.
Thanks for coming and opening up the conversation. It was a good one.
Nice to meet you. Hopefully we meet you on the flip side. I have lots of questions for you for sure.
It's going to be about 2 or 3 months before I'm in Colorado, so I got to sell my house and all that stuff, but just be patient.
Kelly, reach out to me and I'll put you in contact with Scott too, so you can.
I would love that. That would be great. Thanks so much, Scott, for coming on and your input. It's awesome.
Thank you.
See you later, Chief.
See you, Sam.
Bye-bye.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming out. D420K and Johnny B, the Dragonfly Earth Medicine crew, Farmer Tom, Skunkman Sam, Wade Laughter, and of course, Dr. Mark Chaldone and Scott. Always a good conversation with everyone. I did appreciate you know what? I appreciate not everyone agreeing on everything. I appreciate the discourse, you know, being able to have dialogue about different things and not get upset and start calling each other names, but just have like an adult conversation. I mean, I wish actually Cuban would have come back in, because when we started the organics talk, he was talking a lot about how he does not do organics, and he just had his own good points that would have made I just think it's okay for us to disagree, and that's kind of the biggest value here on Hash Church, in my opinion. As you know, Josh was saying, this industry is changing so fast, month after month after month, that it's pretty important to have a dialogue going to let people kind of catch up and keep up with what's going on and the changes that are so consistent. But I want to thank all of you for coming out and sharing your time, and of course the people who are watching and listening. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next Sunday if I can make it happen. So,
it's always great to hash it out with you guys. Have a good one.
Does anybody else think that Scott looked like Michael Keaton?
He definitely had a little Michael Keaton thing going on, for sure.
I was curious of that myself.
I'm just not afraid to say it.
That's awesome. Awesome, everyone. Have a great Sunday.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Blessings.
Peace.
Peace.